Very good morning to all our viewers outside there. Welcome to another edition of The Other Perspective, brought to you by Alliance Finance Monitoring, a political finance watchdog. The Other Perspective runs every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 12 midday East African time. Kindly, I would like to implore all of you to subscribe to all our social media platforms. That is on Facebook, we are ACFIMUG. On Twitter, we are ACFIMUG. On YouTube channel, we are ACFIM Uganda. Kindly hit on that subscription button of YouTube as we proceed. So today we are going to be looking at the haphazard salary enhancement for civil servants in Uganda and its implication on public service delivery. My name is Abel Esero and I'm going to be your host today. Before we proceed, I would like to give you a background on why we have chosen to discuss about this topic. Currently, the Uganda Local Government Workers Union has issued a notice of industrial action starting at midnight tonight, which is 6th of July 2022. The local government staff are demanding that government implements the collective bargaining agreement that was signed in 2018. By this agreement, the salary of the highest paid local government official, that is the chief administrative officer, will be increased from the current rate of Uganda shillings 2.3 million, which is equivalent to 617 US dollars, to Uganda shillings 15 million, which is an equivalent to 4,024 US dollars. While the salary of the lowest paid staff at the local government, which is currently the attendants, will be increased from the current rate of Uganda shillings 187,000, which is equivalent to 50 US dollars, to Uganda shillings 1.7 million. That's an equivalent of 456 US dollars. We all know that local governments are the special purpose vehicles for service delivery in Uganda. In other words, it is at the local government level that the rubber touches the ground, that any industrial action at this level would significantly affect the ordinary citizen on the ground. This industrial action comes in a quick succession to the one of the teachers that ended on Monday, 4th July 2022, after the teachers met the president of Uganda, that's Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. The cause for the industrial action was still salaries, particularly after government haphazardly increased the salary of science teachers in secondary schools from Uganda shillings 1.4 million, which is equivalent to 375 US dollars, to Uganda shillings 4 million, an equivalent of 1,081 US dollars per month. Conversely, there is looming industrial action from public universities, non-teaching staff, executives forum. It remains to be seen whether or not the medical interns and midwives were also sorted. The president tweeted on Monday, and I quote, "We have a strategy and no one should disrupt us. We are aware of these issues and we are committed to handling them. Therefore, my advice to the teachers is that they should go back and teach." This and much more we shall be discussing today on The Other Perspective. And with me are three gallant guests who are going to be giving us their insights on the haphazard salary enhancement for civil servants and its implication on public service delivery in Uganda. The first is Mr. Henry Muguzi, who is an anti-corruption activist and also a governance expert. So he's going to give us his clue and his expertise on the areas of governance, on whether how Uganda's public service is currently being managed is effective and is important for the effective public service delivery to the ordinary citizens. And also, Henry, you're welcome.
Thank you, Abel. A pleasure for me to be here.
And we shall also be joined by Priska Wanyenya, who is a journalist who reports from the Parliament of Uganda. And we know that budgets are always appropriated from the August House. So you'll also have to tell us what is cooking up, what are the MPs cooking from that side, because we know that they're trying to have discussions on these very matters. So you'll also help us digest what are some of the things that are coming from the August House. You're welcome, Priska.
Thanks so much, Abel.
And lastly, we shall have Mr. Felix Kafuma, who is an anti-corruption activist, but also a governance expert. He will also be joining us and taking us through some of the things he thinks government should do and the teachers should also do, and also all those other civil servants who are in the public service. Felix, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Abel. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'll dive straight away to you, Henry, and also the other guests, but I will start with you, Henry. What is your take on the current wave of industrial actions in the public service?
Thank you, Abel. Of course, this must be as concerning to me as it should be to every Ugandan or anybody that wishes Uganda well. Because what we have seen in the recent past is an escalation in the industrial action. We don't know for now and for sure what was agreed between the president and the teachers who had laid their tools for almost 3 weeks. We don't know the morale they have, but also when the local governments are promising of this looming industrial action that starts at midnight tonight, that of course should be a worry, because one of the reasons why we went down the path of local government was to make sure services reach the people. And like you rightly put it, local governments were established as a special purpose vehicle for service delivery in Uganda. Most of those services are supervised by, but also implemented by through local governments. You talk about schools, health, medical, all these are security, local governments. Now, if there is industrial action, God knows, only God knows what will happen, because you imagine you've gone to the district and the officials are not there, the sub-county officials are not there, everything gets to be stuck. The service providers need to be paid. They need paperwork that is needed to, deliver services, and there's nobody to process this paperwork. As a matter of fact, the whole administration unit is crippled, and of course, with the tools being laid down, there's nobody to supervise. Remember, local government officials are the ones that are supposed to execute the administrative function. So you have a situation where you have a sheep without a shepherd, and therefore we don't know what will happen. And this is also unprecedented. But the wave of this action is telling in terms of how we are managing this country, because we seem to see a domino of these actions, and the inherent factor is that civil servants are not well paid, and this is a factor we have known for many years, that the civil servants should be well remunerated, but also with the current worsening economic situation, the cost of living is going high up. As a matter of fact, many people are even failing to find transport to get to places of work. Those that used to drive have decided to park their vehicles. So the situation is dire, and of course then this industrial action is worrying, and most worrying is the knowledge that there is also other forms of industrial action looming, and we don't know who else is going to join in the industrial action. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. I want now to bring Priska. You sit at Parliament, and these waves of industrial actions have been so many, and MPs contribute partly to these waves because they are the ones who appropriate mostly these budgets. So, what is your take on these current waves of industrial action, and what implication do they have on the ordinary citizens?
Thanks so much, Abel. And when I remember when the permanent secretary to the Ministry of Public Service issued that warning to the teachers that she would strike them off the payrolls if they refuse to return back to class. And the MPs that I spoke to reacted angrily to the proposal, and there were press conferences held to warn government against the move. But I partly blame the parliament for the mess, because the proposal to increase the salary of scientists has been around parliament, I think, for the past 5 years. Even it started in the 10th parliament, and parliament resisted it. So this time around, what Minister of Finance did was to bring the proposal in another name, calling it enhancement of salaries for scientists. So the MPs, I would say they got hoodwinked, or they knew about the move and they approved it. So it kind of shocked me when they reacted angrily to the threats by government and the strike, because I mean, you're the people who approved this money, the 495 billion that Kasaija announced on salary enhancement. And to me, I looked at them as people who are hypocrites. And I remember during the press conference, one of the journalists asked them, "You are the people who approve this money, so why are you coming to lament before us?" And the teacher and the MP said, for them, the proposal came from the executive, and their work was to deal with the approval. They are not the ones who came up with the budget. That was the excuse they gave. But and so now when the issue backfires, and you remember this the strike happened at the time, some of them were in the constituencies supervising PDM. And I remember yesterday when Cecilia Ogwal said that they faced uncomfortable time during their recess in the constituencies, because even when they were telling people to embrace the parish development model, all the questions were lying on when are our kids going back to school. So even the motive as to why they went to the constituency for the recess was not achieved, because there was something more underlying. There was a bigger crisis than that had taken them. And to me, I was like, well, they deserved that uncomfortable, because for them, they are simply lamenting about being uncomfortable, but the teachers, their livelihood is at stake. So, and it gave me a good feeling, because I know that for now Ugandans have woken up and they are now holding their leaders accountable. So as and you know, now the issue has the speaker also communicated yesterday, telling the teachers to go back to class. She was like, she understands how they feel. I'm always hesitant towards using the line of "I understand how you feel," because if you've not been a teacher yourself, you can really not understand the plight. As I'm speaking as someone who has had a mother who is a teacher, and you know, you go to school and you literally, we always tell her that we basically studied on loans from Centenary Bank, because it was a loan after loan. So, and as someone who has been there, lived that life, I cannot say that I may understand what my mom went through, but I cannot feel what she felt. So for you, an accountant, and you are a speaker who has recently acquired cars that are worth 2.1 billion shillings, you're telling a teacher who is receiving about 300,000 that you understand, and yet you are the same person who was accused of paying MPs about 5 million shillings for voting you. So you want to tell people that you understand someone who is living loan after loan, who is earning 300,000. It is kind of disturbing, that assumption. You'd rather use another word than you understand, you feel what they feel, because those are two different worlds apart. So now they are saying that they are going to they are going to make sure the government fulfills its pledge as to a discussion. But I can't recall whether it's Henry or Abel who said that we are not so sure of what the two parties agreed upon, the president and the UNATU, when they met in Kololo. So none has come out to explain, and I think it's a shortfall on their part not to kind of because when you are announcing you announce the strike, then if you're calling it off, I think you owe the public, because we are also stakeholders in this arrangement. So the parliament says that they are going to make sure that if government holds government accountable to fulfill the pledges, and I'm not so sure how they are going to. Perhaps they are going to. I know the Prime Minister will issue the statement. Probably that is when we shall understand what the two parties agreed upon, because right now it's like we are in the darkness, all of us.
Thank you, Priska. Felix, you've just heard Henry and Priska have shared their take on the current wave of industry actions in the public service. I would also like to hear from you, but also embed the elemental. If the demands of all striking public servants are met, as they may, how feasible is it within the current budget resource envelope of Uganda?
Thank you, thank you so much, Abel. Very interesting discussions, and very important as well. Quickly, let me start by having a quick comment on the current state of industrial actions. And remember, we've been here before. I think for the last 5 years, almost many areas, medical workers, teachers at tertiary institutions, secondary teachers, across board midwives have been engaging in industrial action one after the other, and usually it ends with the groups that are striking meeting the head of state. Remember, we have what we call line ministries or responsible ministries for those different public servants that are striking, whether it's health workers or whether it's medics or whether it's teachers. They all fall under separate ministries. But every time they strike, it's a follow-up on the previous strike. That's the first thing you must observe. It's never a new strike. It's a follow-up of a previous strike because of unresolved issues. So we have a spate of continuous strikes that have come to unfortunately characterize this regime. But also, another observation is that it only takes the head of state to convince them to get back to office and work. There are a number of questions that, for me, that linger. One, because that speaks to the broader issues of how do we manage our public affairs, the public affair management aspects. And I've asked myself 3 questions. Do we manage by crisis? Do we manage by impulse? Or do we manage by deception? Or a combination of the 3? Because now, even the current strike for teachers, which is on hold now, which has been suspended, it took the head of state to intervene. Like Henry said, we don't know exactly what was the ingredients of the negotiations for the teachers to suspend their industrial action. But I'm so sure, mark my word, we may be back here again when the issues they discussed and they agreed and resolved in that meeting with the head of state are still pending and not resolved. Now we have local government, and every strike that comes through, or that every industrial action that we see coming through, refers to a previous engagement where unresolved issues were discussed and are still pending to date. So, but what does that mean? I think it means, in all honesty, government has not demonstrated its commitment to deal with the problem of harmonizing public service salary structure. There was a process which was undertaken, granted by the Public Service Commission, but you see that government is not taking this serious and prefers to deal with these issues as they come, piecemeal, not holistically. So then we are in that state, which I call management by either crisis or impulse or deception, or a combination of the three. The issue of whether this is realistic, how feasible is it, especially the demands, because look, if indeed local governments, for example, local government workers decide to put down their tools or follow through their threat, if you look at how big the local government structure is, and to enforce that kind of wage demand, the new wage demand that they are presenting as the basis for their industrial action, it is practically impossible. Remember, our resource envelope is not that so elastic. We have a budget, and by the way, for the last 3 years running, we've been having a budget that has been oscillating between 43 to 47 million. Sorry, 43 to 47 billion. So we and that budget is a budget also, which on many occasions the revenue collections are falling short. So it's a budget financed by heavily external and internal borrowing. So if this is to be actualized vis-a-vis our resource envelope, you are literally telling us that you are going to go back and borrow. Already we are complaining about our debt burden. So you are going now to stretch our debt burden to accommodate these interests of a wage structure that is very untenable and unsustainable. Yet there are some practical solutions that could be handled. So to answer your question straight away, it's not tenable, it's not feasible. I foresee a situation where all these different groups that are striking will continue to strike. They are promised, deal with the few other leaders. They keep them in hope. They don't address them. I don't see government holistically handling this issue because it has budget implications, but it also has budget discipline. It also has political will. And I don't know whether those three ingredients that I'm discussing right now are at play in the decisions that are being taken. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you. Henry, you've just been listening to Felix, and we all know that currently only government has about 7 trillion for wages, for the wage bill. And if so happens that they tend to meet all the demands of these striking teachers, do you think this won't have an issue on the current budget, and what implication will that have now on the other side of our service delivery? And also, I would like you to respond to there's a question which everyone lingers almost on everyone's head. For the longest time, it has been argued that one of the causes of corruption, of endemic corruption within the public service, is poor pay. Do you think with the current increment, anything can be addressed in the area of corruption? So I would like you to respond to those questions.
Thank you very much, Felix. If you look at the numbers being proposed by the local government staff, where the cows pay, I think would skyrocket up to 15 million per month, and then the lowest paid one would be around 1.5 million. That would be office attendant. So I was looking at the percentages. Of course, I have noticed here that the biggest percentage of local government budgets goes in the biggest percentage of the local government wage bill is accounted for by primary school teachers at 42.4%, followed by health workers at at 20.58%, and in third place is secondary school teachers at 17.72%. So in total, teachers of primary schools and teachers of secondary school account for 60% of the total wage bill at local government level. Now, the officials that are promising this industry action, their wage bill accounts for only 9.4%. So at that level, you say, okay, maybe, just maybe we can accommodate the 9 point, because the percentage is not so big, 9.4%. But that would mean that if you succumbed, if you did grant the wish of the local government staff, then the public servants in other government ministries, departments, and agencies are also going to demand that you do the same. Remember, what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. And therefore, that is likely to push our budget, our wage bill to beyond 10 or 11 trillion. That might then have to account for about 15% of the national budget. Now, at that level, when you have almost a quarter of the national budget going on the wage bill, it gets into the threshold of what is not sustainable. Because you remember, then you have to do debt servicing at 15 trillion. Then you have to do the recurrent expenditure, the payment of rent, of utilities, of the things you need to run the offices. Then you discover that almost 80% of the national budget is going into this recurrent spending. Then you cannot develop a country like that. So it is not sustainable. I think what has to happen is that, and Felix alluded to this, why is it that everything is boiling down to the president? We have learned as students of management that one of the basic tenets of a good manager is to delegate. Delegation is a key principle in management. You cannot be the president who is solving everything. Why is it that every industrial action cannot come to a resolution, never mind what kind of resolution it is, whether it is cajoling, because we don't know whether these young men and women were cajoled or agreed to certain terms. But why does it end with the president? What happened with the delegation? Excuse me. So I think that would be an issue of concern. I'm not sure our budget as of now can accommodate this. Maybe we pray and pray hard that the revenues from oil exploration come through faster than we think. Number two, the question of corruption, because it has been the argument that the reason corruption is endemic within the public services is because of poor pay. I think corruption may not necessarily cease by mere enhancement of salaries, because it is now a way of life. The greed that has been embedded and ingrained in the minds of these men and women who occupy public service, I want to argue that will continue to be there. If you look at departments where you have one of the most highest paid staff, Office of the Auditor General, how are they auditing? They still charge money for good statements in audit. I do know my colleagues in government tell me the Auditor General comes and says, look, guys, when the Auditor General is coming, they have to collect monies. We see we shall have to give the Auditor General about 50 million. Can your department, 100 million, can your department part with 50? Department so and so part with 20. So we make a package of 20 or 100 million. So you see now, but also URA has corruption ceased. UNRA has corruption ceased. What about in Parliament? One of the highest paid public officials, even when they are going to vote on EALA, they want to be paid. They want to vote on the speaker, they want to be paid. They want to legislate on something, they want to be paid. So corruption may not necessarily cease by virtue on the stroke of enhancement of salaries of these men and women. Why? Because it has become a way of life. It is so deeply ingrained within these government officials. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. We are going to go for a brief break, then we shall return with the next segment.
No one is coming to me. Nobody is minding about me. No one is yearning to see me. Eh? What is the problem?
Then we should go before they come.
Are you mad? I changed all this money for them. I want them to ask. I want to give them all this money, but no one is minding.
What should I do? How do I carry?
You go there and tell them to. You go. No. You just go talk to them one by one.
Hey, Honorable, what has happened?
Exactly. Thank you for coming. You know, this whole place has changed. What is the matter?
What is it exactly?
No one is yearning to see me. Nobody is minding. No one is asking for money. Nothing.
Oh, is that what you mean? No. Honorable, let me tell you this.
Yes.
Things changed.
Changed?
Yes. As we, your campaigning managers, we agreed that we need parliamentarians, our honorable MPs, who present issues in parliament.
So is that what you decided?
That's what we decided.
The desire of any progressive democracy is to have citizens who focus on issue-based politics and not transactional politics, which suffocates representative democracy.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Welcome back from that break. We are today discussing about the haphazard salary enhancements for civil servants in Uganda and looking at the implications on public service delivery. Before we went in for that break, Henry was touching on the area of corruption, and he has shared that it's not necessarily poor pay that contributes to corruption, but it's just a culture that is imbued among these people. If you're corrupt, you will continue being corrupt even if they increase on your pay. So I want to bring in Priska. I know you have been following this thing of the industrial action by teachers, which was suspended on Monday. What do you make of the teachers' decision to just suspend the industrial action without even giving the public concrete reasons or why they decided to suspend? What do you make out of it?
The impunity and the arrogance, the lack of accountability within Uganda itself, because the teachers were looking out for their needs, not knowing that the decisions they took. And from the public, I know that the public was in support. Most of the members of the public were in support of the strike. But the mere fact that UNATU didn't even bother to return to the public and say, okay, this is what we have agreed upon, it kind of gives a wrong picture of UNATU itself. But to me, I don't know whether I'm the only one who holds this view, but it reads to this whole strike by teachers and the decision by the president to increase the salaries of scientists. It looks more of his method of governance, because we know he's good at ruling by divide and rule. So initially the teachers used to speak with the same voice. When they are going to strike, they all come up. But so, and I'm saying this is my opinion. So he probably sat down and say, how can I deal with these elements, as he usually calls them? So he brought on the scientists. So literally now the scientists are on their own, the arts teachers are on their own, because the arts teachers have also formed their own union. And I think at the end, I think the biggest beneficiary of this strike is the president, because he has managed to divide the teachers as he wanted, because they can no longer talk with the same voice. And I talked to someone and I say that I'm very sure he's hatching a plan for the doctors also, I do not know how his plan is going to be, because doctors are almost in the same, and they have the doctors, they have the nurses, laboratories. So I'm very sure he's going to hatch the same plan. So now, and for on many occasions, most of the people who have headed UNATU have later on sought for political offices. So the divide and rule method has worked for the president, and I think he's the biggest beneficiary of all this. And and it has created the room for confusion, because when I was speaking to one of the MPs, one of the MPs said that science teachers are not scientists. His argument is science teachers only explain what scientists invented. And he gave an example of Newton when we are being taught in physics. And he said that when we are being taught about the Newton laws and everything, it is Newton who is the scientist. So the science teacher is only coming up to explain. So there is no reason as to why a science teacher will claim to be a scientist. So the confusion now, we are going back to the drawing board to now define who is a scientist. Because if someone throws up that argument that the mere fact that you're a scientist does not mean you are a scientist, now the state of confusion that the president wanted has worked on his favor. But to me, the other thing I read from this whole argument is the misplaced priorities of government, because we all agree that we need to give more focus on sciences and the scientists. But what is government doing to make sure that students embrace sciences? We know for a fact that most of the schools that have science laboratories, chemistry, physics, are traditional schools. Those were schools that were built mostly by missionaries. You can go back and ask the Minister of Education to give you a list of the schools that government has constructed within the 36 years in power that have laboratories. I think they even reach 10 of them. You see that? So you want students to pursue sciences, but how are they going to pursue them? We know scenarios of very many schools that students are studying under the trees. So are you going to put the equipment, the chemistry equipment, under the trees? Because I thought these are the things that government has to first of all address. And we have introduced computer science, which is now a compulsory. But how many of these schools have computer laboratories? We all know that for a fact that most of the schools, what they do is they ferry students to other schools. They have arrangements whereby they ferry students to other schools, and usually the ferrying happens towards like third term or the second term of S4 and S6. That is when the students come in contact with these equipments. And so you are bringing the students towards the end of their year to interact with these equipments, yet you have piled a lot of theory studies among them. Of course, the students will be overwhelmed by this. And the argument that the president gave on enhancing sciences and was quashed yesterday when Daily Monitor published a list of his own ministers. And I happened to look through the list indicated that out of the 80 over 80 ministers, he has only 10 of them are scientists. So and we also had we had a minister who still has a certificate. We had those ones for diploma and who are still who have been pursuing a bachelor's for 5 years, and you know the one I'm talking about. So and the president himself is a humanity. And they are those who have gone further to even ask to interrogate in his own family, who are scientists. So you cannot claim to be pursuing the scientific agenda, yet your cabinet is not reflecting the scientific agenda. Start with your cabinet and say, the scientists are doing this, these are the scientists on my list, before you start. And when you look at I had quite a number of teachers who are arts teachers in his cabinet, and they are the ones who are cheering on this decision to increase scientists. So it shows how privileged, how they are blinded by their privilege, forgetting their background as teachers before they attain the places they are right now.
Thank you, Priska.
Let me say something small because she has tickled me. As she was submitting, a scenario developed in my head. If you want to have a quality omelette, where do you start? Do you start by going and looking for a quality chef, or you start by looking for a quality egg and the quality oil and the quality onions and other ingredients? So if you went out and only got a good chef and gave him kwara eggs, would you get a quality omelette? So I don't know how we are going to have quality scientists or have scientists without putting in place the ingredients that are needed to produce scientists or to make those students like sciences. Has he even reflected on why is he himself not a scientist? Was it because the scientists during his days, the science teachers were not well paid? I think the president should stop hoodwinking us. And I think as citizens, we have to wake up, because we have also asked the question, if we think scientists are so important, isn't he based on the sidelines? Doesn't he want to be president? Isn't he aging? Isn't he tired? Isn't he the one who said that at 75 you cannot govern? So let us not be hoodwinked. I think there's much more than meets the eye. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. Felix, you just had Priska discuss something about teachers, where she says teachers have been a problem to the head of state, and it devised a tactic of divide and rule to make sure he breaks them and make sure he causes confusion within their umbrella so that they don't have one voice, uniform voice. Now, that has already caused confusion within the teachers, and now there's no cohesion and they don't have that solidarity, and some of them might even lose the morale to teach as they used to teach. Where does that leave our education sector as one of the areas of key areas of service delivery that government is supposed to improve?
Thank you, Abel. If I answer that question, Priska also tickled me on something when he said that the president is deliberate on dividing the teachers. And I think I agree with Priska's observation, because there is also a trend, a consistent trend of this regime disorganizing any efforts towards citizen organizing. Teachers coming together in umbrellas like UNATU, having medical workers coming together, because when you are one, organized, you can negotiate. You can negotiate and have tangible outcomes. And when you are one and organized, you have the power to engage. And I think for a long time, we've seen the pockets of organizing, the little that were remaining were around such formations like teachers, medical workers, even civil society. So when you look at all those areas, there has been a deliberate attempt for the president to weaken them. And one of his best tactics is to divide and rule. It makes you fight against each other. And I think he is really succeeding on this one. Like Priska has observed, I don't know whether UNAT is going to remain as strong as it was now that you have other groups coming up, arts associations versus science associations. Yet it was one group. I won't be surprised if something comes up with in the medical world. I won't be surprised if under local government something. I think this is something we must observe, and it's quite sad because these are the only pockets we ideally that were remaining for citizens to organize and engage meaningfully and negotiate for tangible reforms. But that said, what does this mean and where does it leave the education sector? I think for starters, where has the education sector been before? It will just make it worse because it's not that we have an education sector which has been in a good place or in a better place. It's just going to make it worse. For starters, you are going to have divided teachers whose loyalty is divided. Some will be loyal to one structure and others loyal to another structure. But you're also going to have teachers that are not motivated. It's not that they have been motivated before, but continuously you remember what happened during I think the first lockdown when teachers also came up and they were looking for money and stuff and they were complaining. Most of the teachers abandoned teaching. In fact, it's on record until now. A good number of government teachers reported back to classes, but didn't report back. They still do the other kind of work they had picked on during COVID, like riding motorcycles. And some of them were arguing that, of course, riding motorcycle is even more lucrative than being a teacher. So when you have an education sector, because an education sector is built around infrastructure, that's another thing altogether. We can discuss that until the hands come back. It's built around the human resource, which is now we are discussing the teachers that are employed and are motivated to teach. To do that, you must, on top of money, you must also equip them with the necessary logistics and environment to teach. And they must be also skilled to teach. Issues around supervision. But also then, there are issues to do with the pupils and the environment. Now, already as the sector, it is struggling in infrastructure. The sector already has been having challenges around the human resource, issues around staffing. Most schools don't even have staff quotas. The pay is poor, and their reasons are already justified. And then you have also the environment within which the learning is done. All those are factors that are affecting education as is now. Now, when you have a sick sector as is, and in that sick sector, you now introduce another virus, which is money, division over money. You're paying science teachers over above than the other. You are already creating conflict. You can't have divisions within the teaching staff and expect them to teach. This is what has been happening, by the way. The arts teachers go to a point and were like saying, since you science teachers, your salaries were increased, we go and teach even our part. You go and teach even what we're supposed to teach. Some of them put down their tools and said, we are not going to teach. How do you explain a headmaster or a head teacher who is earning much less than a science teacher because he's an arts teacher? So all these things create disharmony, create conflict. You cannot expect learning to take place, and our sector as the education sector will definitely be killed. Remember, the most affected are the population that benefits from government-funded schools. The people who are making these reckless decisions take their children to private schools. They don't seem to care that much. They don't have an understanding of what this means to disorganize teaching, the teaching fraternity, and what that means to the education sector. Because for them, their kids don't partake of these public schools. So I think it spells doom for the sector. It's bad enough already, and it's an area I think everybody would be interested in, because the quality of a population and also the foundation of a nation is on education. Education and health, those two sectors are very critical. Education and health, they are the foundation, they are the heart of a population. So I think government should ideally prioritize and be serious about this and stop politicking around it as well. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you. I don't know whether Henry is online. I wanted him to respond to this concerning what explains the silence of parents, political party leaders, and other key stakeholders while all this industrial strike continues to happen.
I think, Abel,
Industrial-
that question reminds me of there is a time in office when we asked ourselves, when we were around the scandals of Pinetti, Ruvowa, Coffee Deal, what, and then there was a time when every day you open the newspapers and are awakened to a fresh scandal. And then we argued that it seems the powers that be have just decided that let us inundate these Ugandans with too many scandals until they become numb. So over time, there's been too many of such things that have happened. I think there's been a deliberate effort to demobilize efforts of citizens. Citizens are undergoing some sort of inertia. They don't want to engage because you would wonder the children that go to these primary schools that were closed for over 3 weeks are the children not of the policymakers, just like Felix put it, but of the ordinary voter. So the ordinary voter who matters on the ground had their children at their homes for 3 weeks. 2 years after, 6 months after the country underwent the longest lockdown of schools of 2 years. And you could not hear the voices of parents even rising up to question. And then you could not find the voices of political parties whom we would have expected to profit from this kind of situation by using this as political capital. And then you wonder, where are they? And then what about us, civil society? What about the traders? So I think it points to a situation that is worrying, a situation where a country where citizen organizing is weakening every day, a situation where the citizens have gone into slumber. That can only provide a fertile ground for authoritarianism, but also for allowing the regime to stay as long as it can. So it is worrying that nobody rose up. It is even more worrying that even UNAT, like Priska put it, does not feel duty bound to explain to the stakeholders what exactly was agreed upon. So I think these are not good situations, and we cannot have democracy in a country where the citizens are sleeping or undergoing some form of slumber. Citizens must be awake and bringing pressure to bear on the people, the men and women that occupy public office. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. Our time is fast spent, so I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes to give your wrap up and we end the show. I will start with you, Felix.
Thank you, Abel. My wrap up on this one is that I think the issue of industrial actions that keep cropping up, it's an area which government must deliberately, holistically address, not in piecemeal, not to deal with the different interests as they arise. Sorry, because this is not helpful to public sector, and most of us interface with the public sector. It also speaks volumes on the way the public affairs are managed. It is in the interest of government, and I think there's also that argument whether we are dealing with the government or we are dealing with the regime, but that's not the debate. But it should be of interest of government if there are any sectors that they should prioritize above even the political sector. Is the sector of education and is the sector of health. They should prioritize those two sectors, including remunerating the actors in those two sectors, because that is the fulcrum of a healthy and productive and a quality population.
Thank you, Felix. Priska, your parting shot.
I will have to accuse Felix of copying me for the first time because that is the same argument that I was going to bring as my parting shot. Only that I would point him out that you almost like every year we see the UPDF recruiting about 10,000 soldiers. I don't know if you have taken notice of that, but I do not know whether it's me who doesn't read the newspapers. I have not seen notices of Ministry of Education or Public Service putting out announcements of 10,000 teachers. The last time I saw was the Minister of Health in Parliament saying they are going to recruit about 2,000 medical workers. So we are looking at a government that is prioritizing soldiers over the capital development like health sector and education. So that is why I'm accusing Felix of copying me.
Thank you, Priska. Henry, you will now conclude.
So we are looking at a regime that seems to learn nothing and forget nothing, because I want to remind you that throughout the 1990s, government of Uganda underwent what they called the public sector governance reforms, which was aimed at cleaning up the public service and enhancing their salaries, ensuring that civil servants are well motivated. We are right where we started 20 years afterwards, where we started in 1990s. So how can we be a nation that moves 3 steps forward and 20 steps backward? I think this is an indictment on the current leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry, Felix, and Priska, for your views, and also to our viewers outside there. Thank you for being with us. We have come to the tail end of The Other Perspective. We shall again be here next week on Wednesday, same time. For those who have maybe watched halfway, you can still watch the same show on our YouTube channel. That's ACFIM UG. Just look for ACFIM UG, then you'll be able to rewatch the show. But don't forget to like all our social media platforms. From me to you, thank you. Let's meet again next week on Wednesday.